Morning, everyone. Here live on Landscape Talk Morning Show. Have a great episode. Going to be talking a little bit about processes, and the process that we're specifically talking about is sharpening blades, cleaning trucks, keeping things organized, really driving accountability in your organization, and how we do it with one specific area, and hopefully it can help you do that. So if you're interested in driving a little bit more accountability with your team, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've learned when we've tried to do it, when it didn't work, and then ultimately what we found to work with our crews for taking care of equipment and really just keeping things clean, organized, sharp, all of those things. So if you're interested in processes like this, check out LOS. LOS is a landscape operating system that's combined with a peer group where you get to share ideas and learn a lot of this stuff from other landscapers, as well as best business practices. So if you're interested in that, check it, scan the QR code, and be good to go. So we'll dive in today. Maybe, we're here today with Brandon and Dan. Maybe just give an idea of, I guess the question is, a lot of people, a lot of business owners and firms struggle with processes. So as we talk about some of the things that we're doing, there's different areas. So one of those is, cleaning, prepping, making sure trucks are ready, all those things. So, maybe Brandon, you could share a little bit about what life was like before processes, because a lot of times people that are listening, a lot of them are going to be pre-processed. They're trying to get to that point. So by sharing what it was like and, where we sucked and, things weren't good and that type of stuff, it helps them say, hey, that's me. That's me. I'm feeling that right now. And then I think it would be good to share a couple things that we might have tried. I mean, you've been here over the years, maybe things that we tried and didn't work. And then maybe we can switch to Dan, where you share a little bit about like what we're doing today and how it's working, in that. So I think that would be a good flow, a good short episode, just to kind of map out this in a really, specific way for anybody that's looking to do that. So I'll turn it over to you, Brandon. Any thoughts that you have, and maybe just, share some things on your perspective.
Yeah, sure. So definitely, I mean, some processes, things that we sucked at. I can think of, when it comes to like field staff and things like that. At the beginning, one of the things was just like organization at the end of the day was like not good. So like we had some things in place. We had a dumpster. As soon as you pulled in, kind of a fuel tank, throwing the fuel up, empty out their trash and stuff. But we didn't have designated parking spots. Sounds crazy, but everybody just kind of pulled in into an empty lot. And with the amount of trucks and stuff we had, they had to be front and back. So, one truck in front of another setup. So then in the mornings, if for any reason, that truck in the front needed to get something or didn't have something ready, they were holding up the crew behind them. And then that crew is standing there. They might have everything they need for that day. They don't need to make any adjustments. And they're waiting for the other crew to get out. So that was one process that we streamlined, got set up, got guys set up in parking spots that they're in the same spot. We color coordinate everything. That's another big process,
I think
parking
one of the
at.
things that I think one of the things that we're just maybe trying to focus on today is just the Thursday payroll, and like that, just that specific process of, what was it like before, when we were doing like that, like every 2 weeks or on a pay week, bi-weekly, we bring the guys in to do what, and why is it important, and what were we like before we did that. So just kind of painting the picture, every 2 weeks, when it's a payroll week, they wash trucks, they do, all the things there. So I really want to dive down on just that specific process, and like, what was it like before we started, doing that? So for just clarification purposes, we wash trucks, we inspect them, we sharpen blades, we do all that type of stuff. But what were some of the things? I mean, I can think of one thing. We sharpen blades like 2 times a year. It'd be like July, and we'd be like, hey, did we sharpen the blades yet? And they're like, no. And you're like, what do you mean we didn't sharpen blades? So just kind of like some of the challenges that we saw maybe before we implemented that, and maybe some of the benefits that you see from doing that. And then Dan, maybe a little bit more about the process there, and what we see. And we've implemented some checks to make sure that there's accountability, all that good stuff, because I think people are actually looking to say, I'm not sharpening my blades, things seem like they're a mess, my trucks aren't clean, and everybody really wants this. I think you want to have clean trucks, you want to have a good image, but we did too for a long time, and we didn't until we did. So how do you get there?
Yeah, so I think it was, basically just setting like, listen, this is when it's getting done, and we will be checking up and following up on it. Because prior to that, we'd be like, hey guys, sharpen your blades, and then they would kind of just go through the motion and not really do it. They get back late or whatever it is, and our expectation is it needs to get done on a pay week no matter what. So like, we're saying like carve out the time to make sure, like manage your own time and make sure you have time to do it, because it's going to be expected. We're going to inspect it. We're going to make sure that it's done. Whereas before, guys would just not do it as often as they should, and they would try to like alter things. So they would adjust their deck height or something like that. We have all that stuff preset. We don't want them adjusted. Just if they do the process, they clean their decks out, you get a better cut. If you sharpen your blade, you get a better cut, instead of just taking 15 20 minutes to do that. They would try to like do other things to get around it. So what we started doing was they would do that on a Thursday. If we're in on a Friday, we would check it. If it wasn't Friday, then we'd be in on Monday, and we'd go around, check it, take photos, and then sometimes award a winner, or base things off of that, highlight the people that do a great job. Don't necessarily point out the people that didn't, but human nature is you want to be praised. So you see someone else getting praised for it. It's funny, we just did this last pay week. We handed out an award for the best. I went around the next day, checked all the trucks and trailers, took photos, and then said, hey, this is who I thought their setup looked the best, and we gave out an award for it. And it's funny because this week I see guys spit shining. I mean, they're doing everything they can to clean their trucks and make them look good. So that was top of mind. Trucks are looking a lot sharper, looking a lot better, or it improves your image. And people end up carving out the time for it because they know it's important, because we put an emphasis on it. So
and there's some, I feel like this week's going to be a tough one, because I mean they were waxing them babies.
Yeah, and they look good. And they even I mentioned, just thinking of this, even though we have a process in place, doing that award, but then also pointing out to people like, hey, it's not just pull out the pressure washer and spray it. It's like, get it out and scrub it, clean the windows, really go the full way. And the first truck I seen back while I was still there did it the full 9 yards. They scrubbed it down. They water to it is great. That's okay. But like, if there's nothing like a good old hand scrubbing on a vehicle to get it clean. So
we're not looking for just a little rinse here. We're looking for the good old spit shine. Yeah, get it good. I mean, I saw windows getting washed inside and outside. Yeah, I mean, I think we have a good competition, and the award too. Is actually $50 to for the crew. To a local, convenience store, gas station, whatever. So, get your chew, get your cigs, like, whatever you need, get your Gatorade, your Red Bulls, your Monsters. If you're a landscaper, it's life essential. So like, that is super valuable to have, get like 2 Red Bulls for $50, or what is it, Monsters, and a gallon of gas. Dan, what have you seen that's been good in this process? What would be good for somebody to know that's considering this or is feeling like the disorganization?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, yep. or
Yeah.
the other Dan, whatever. It's fine.
uh, yeah. I mean, my initial thought was just like how much easier it is to get some of these things done when there's like a set time to do it. I mean, there's other processes that are like this, but like you said before, if you just set the expectation of get this done at some point in the week, that doesn't work as well, because you might get back knowing you got to sharpen your blades, but like, oh, these crews are heading out already because they did theirs. I'm stuck here having to do mine today because I didn't do them before, and then there's that temptation to like put it off. Whereas, if you have the team getting back at the end of the day, they're all kind of working together, doing the same things. It makes it more enjoyable, for one, because we're all there, like, working on these things together. And just like, it makes it a lot easier to just do it in that window of time and not like put it off to the next day or the next day or whatever. And like that, I think that's just kind of true in general. There's other processes that are like that where, we've had guys do a certain thing that they're responsible for, but once we set a designated time to do it, then all of a sudden, like, it became a lot easier, and guys were seeing each other do it, so it made it easier for them to do it, kind of thing. So I think that applies kind of broadly to processes in general.
I really like the point that you made there about like the camaraderie. A lot of times when you're on, another episode, we could talk about some of the culture things that we do, like, burger day or team days or things like that. We got a guy wants to cook up, brisket and bring in a bunch of meat, so the idea is like, those things are fun and we do them, but like anytime you can build things into your like culture, and I don't know that we tried it like this, but I like your point, Dan, of, there's a camaraderie at the end of the day, around the shop. Like I was around yesterday and, they're honking the horn, it's like, they're just shouting at each other. Like, I mean, in a good fun way. Right. And then, they're doing a couple of things around the shop. And I think there's just like a team building atmosphere that happens while they're doing the process. And I just think it's really good. I don't know that was something that I, thought of or expected from it, but it's amazing how that naturally forms when you have some of these things and you're actually holding people accountable. And I always say it seems like counterintuitive, because you're holding people accountable to raise a standard, and then they end up liking it. They're like, this is like, it builds camaraderie. So, for people that are afraid to like hold people accountable, like people like it, and it actually creates positive energy. It's created a lot for us.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely something. Like, I seen a quote the other day by Saban. It was like a little clip, and it was like, why are you so hard on your players, or something like that? And he said that it's a culture thing, and everyone has an expectation. Everyone's bought in to a high level of standard, and everyone wants to be held at that standard. That's what great teams do. So I think that's like, kind of where this leans into. Sometimes you're like, well, the group of people I have, they're not gonna adhere to it, or they won't do it. And I think those are just doubts or excuses you're making in your head, where you just gotta say, great people want to be held accountable, and they want everyone else held to that same standard. I can think of places that I've worked before where, there was a standard, but not everyone was held to it, only some. That only creates animosity and people being pissed off. So I think it's, you got to hold everyone to that standard and that accountability. And when you do that, it leads to greatness. So.
Yeah, I think that's another good, topic to, talk about sometime. But, I love that where, you commit to like improving. And, I think about things that are difficult. I've seen a lot of things over the years, but, there's things that are difficult. But, when you have a team that helps you like rise above, like even things when are, are outside like comfort zones or whatever, and you like look back maybe a couple years later and you're like, you know what? I wasn't good at this, and like I pushed myself a little bit and I got better. I think a lot this is an example I think of a lot, is in elementary school, or maybe it was middle school. It was typing. So I had a typing teacher, and typing was a thing. I don't know what they do now. I don't know, but you would type, right? And her name was Mrs. I think it was like Tidy, or it was almost like typing, Mrs. Typing or something. It was like really close to like the thing. But anyway, the idea was it was really hard. And the program was like Mavis Beacon or something back in the day. I don't know if anybody had that, but anyway, you just remember these things. So, but it was like really hard to type. But there's many times where I think, I probably at least once a year, like I'm thankful for that person that helped make sure that I typed and made me do it, because it's changed my life, in the sense, this sounds silly, but it changed my life that like I can type very fast, and it saved me a ton of time. Um, and it's been helpful in everything that I do, whether it was school, college, work, writing papers, books, any of that stuff. It was big. And she was not the most popular at the time because she made you do it. And I go back to that and I'm like, man, that was one of the most beneficial things of, my, education at that point, because it's impacted everything that I've done in the future. So I think it's like sometimes you don't even understand why people hold you accountable, but like when you have a supportive staff or people around you, things that are difficult in the moment, you look back and you're like, man, I learned that skill at this place and it helped me get better. And I think that's just, that's amazing. So as an owner, I look and say, like, how do we do that for our people? How do they not know what they're learning today, but maybe 5 years down the road, they're like, you know what? I learned something there. I learned how to deal with my emotions because I wasn't in check with stuff, and I would just like cuss somebody out. That's a life skill. So, I mean, I get fired up about that stuff. And I do get messages from time to time from, people in the past where they realize that they learned something and then they reach out. That's really fun, or if they're currently in the organization, they learn something, that's fun too. But, you don't always see it in the time. It's kind of like parents and kids, right? Same thing. So yeah, anything else with the process? I think one thing, maybe just comment on the checking, because I think there's one thing that we were doing it. And I think, Brandon, you mentioned about the, like the bonus or the award, and it was getting done okay. But when we put that in place, it seemed like it kind of took it to a next level. But, what do we do to communicate? So communication is important, but what do we do to communicate what we're checking so that they would know? I mean, Dan or Brandon, whoever.
Yeah, so we communicated that like we will be checking up on the cleanliness, and that you're doing exactly what we told you needs done. So I think being very blunt and letting them know, like, we will be checking to make sure that these things are done. We want to see, like, this is what we considered the standard of being clean, and we sent out a list of like vacuuming out the truck, no trash or debris, everything organized, put in the right way, clean the windows, wash the truck, tire shine, make sure it's really clean, looking sharp. And inside the trailers, everything needs to be organized. Now that's a daily thing, but take the little bit of extra time to make sure that's done. Make sure your mowers are cleaned and washed. They should be getting done as well on a payday. And then your decks are cleaned and your blades are sharp. If those things are done, we're taking photos and we're looking at those things, and then the award goes out to the person that does the best job. And it's just like, it doesn't matter if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. It's just like a kid, in baseball. If you win the drill, or in a sport you win, that makes you feel good, and everyone else wants to work a little bit harder to win too. So like, they want the chance to win. So that's how I kind of see it. And I think that's been like a big game changer. And again, you can see results all the time with it. I seen it this week where guys are just putting a little bit more extra effort and emphasis onto it. Like, okay, I want to win too. I want to get my name shout out. I I want a gift card to, be able to grab a couple things from the, the gas station and be able to get some stuff. So yeah, I think that's huge, huge. A lot of times, just being able to be highlighted in front of the group is like a big deal, getting a shout out in front of everybody. That matters. It doesn't always have to be monetary. Monetary is helpful. But it's not like you have to spend hundreds of dollars, I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, there was a couple, we have new trucks and we have some older trucks. And, a few of the ones that were a little bit older, I saw, and they were really shined up. And it's like, what's there, what's the thing, like you can't polish a turd or something. Somebody says it. I've heard somebody say, I don't know if it's you, somebody says that, but like, not that it's like that bad of a truck. I mean, but it's just like, they're a little bit older. And some of those they just had shined up like really nice. Like they were, all the wheels were completely black. It was shined up nice. So it's impressive. I think that's pretty cool. And then the other thing is like clear expectations are really big. So the checklist, like I saw a couple that did not wet wheel the tires. So like, if everything else is in check and you're grading it, like they're going to get, they're missing out on that thing, because that's really that helps really with the curb appeal and going out to customers and looking good, like we care. So, they always say you only get one first impression. So, I think that's really, really good. So Dan, anything else you want to add to this topic before we switch to the,
that's what I was just going to say specifically about having having the specific checklist, I was going to say, is important. So like guys aren't wondering, oh, what else can I do to like try to get ahead, try to get this in good shape. They know exactly the steps, especially early on. Then once you've done it a few times, you kind of get to know it, like all the steps like the back of your hand. But early on, it's just like defining what the standard is specifically with something that's really clear. A list you could just go down is always good.
Yeah, that's awesome. So anything recently that you've seen that, you can't make it up? So we actually had, and I'll have to share it, we actually started to get some things coming in, you can't make it up. So, we'll be able to share a couple of those things. But again, just to set the standard, you can't make it up. It's the things that you see that you're like, you just can't make it up. Like, how would they do that? I give the example every time you see somebody strapping down dirt. There's a million different examples of, you see things in the landscape industry, or your people or our people or whoever's people are doing these things. And you're like, what in the world are they thinking? You can't strap down dirt. There's a lot of crazy stories out there, and we're starting to compile them. Again, we're going to set up like kind of a bracket and then do some giveaways. But we're sharing them just to get a little laugh and chuckle. So anything that you've seen that you're just like, oh my goodness, you just can't make it up.
The thing that comes to mind right away is, we have, for all our properties, there's always like a point of contact, someone on the property that's like the person that like gets our messages and everything. We're in regular communication. And, one of our guys goes out to do residential, yesterday, I think, or the day before. And to be fair, it's not a residential he'd been to before, but he knows the client's name. He knows it's a home, and he reaches out and asks like, who's the contact at this place? It's like, well, I'll give you one guess. The contact is
it's a homeowner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the name we talked about earlier.
Yeah. That was a head scratcher when that one came in. I just looked at Dan in disbelief, and I was just like, this can't be real. It was real, but yep, you can't make it up. It was crickets after we responded. So I guess maybe it was just kind of like, oh, that was pretty stupid that I asked that. But yeah. For me, mine was, we have a guy running our mulch crew. He's doing a great job. Had some experience before. He's doing good, loading truck, helping to lead the crew, trying to make sure they stay on task. And the other day they wrapped up, I always told them the idea is to try to get the truck empty and prep so that it's ready to load for the next day. So you have a full truck going out, because we have multiple trucks. there's a mulch machine on the back of this. And he's like, he was getting ready to leave. We loaded up the first truck to make sure that one was loaded, just a regular F-250 with a dump bed. And then we have another bigger truck that he's driving. So I check him out, and then he pulls up to get checked out. And I said, how much are you loaded? And he said, no, I have probably about a quarter of a truck. So he's like, I told him that we need to try to make sure it's empty at the end of the day. I was like, okay. And I just was like checking to make sure everything was closed up, and I peeked in, and like looked like there's barely anything in there. So I like jump up, look inside the truck, and there's like 2 wheelbarrows in the truck. So he was going to drive the truck out. This truck can hold probably 13, 14 yards of mulch with 2 wheelbarrows in it, because he didn't simply check it. So I was like, dude, you got to load up. Like, you're going to drive 15 minutes out to the job site, unload 2 wheelbarrows and drive back. Like, just unload them here in our bin and reload them. So, you know, even though they're good guys, they know the process. Sometimes they always just need checked out. And that's another, you know, point of emphasis and thing that we do is we have a checkout point before they leave to catch things like that. You know, it's dumb stuff where like we could have wasted and lost a lot of time. Instead, we saved probably, 30, 40 minutes of unnecessary driving. So that for me was, you can't make it up. I was like, I almost smacked myself in the forehead on that one. You're gonna leave with 2 wheelbarrows. That's not gonna get a whole lot done. So you can't make it up.
Yeah, always good stuff. Thanks for tuning in. Again, if you're interested in processes and scaling and some of the things that we talk about, LOS is a peer group and operating system that helps you bring that into your landscape business, kind of comes alongside of you and gives you the roadmap to do it. So if you're interested in that, another thing that is new to, LOS that I think is that you might be worth checking out is out the a la carte system, where you can add a la carte services like bookkeeping or some other things that you may need help with if you're a small business. So really awesome there, really popular. So check them out. And thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back. Thanks for joining us.